Okay, we are on 99B. We're discussing. This is about a little more than 3/4 of the way down in the wide lines. Beginning of the line is K'nosi Sachar.
99B, you say?
99B.
And the first word again is?
I believe in the art scroll we're at note 49.
Say what?
Oh, in the art scroll, note 49.
Oh.
I believe.
Here in the notes you're saying.
In regular print, it's the first word in the line is K'nosi Sachar.
Okay, question. You're talking about the actual text?
Regular, actual text. Actual text.
Okay. Now, give it to me. Not even my first pot of coffee. Tell it to me in Sephardic.
16 lines from the bottom of the page.
Yes, first word in Sephardic.
K'nosi Sachar.
Just a minute. Just a minute. That wasn't Sephardic.
The beginning we're up to is Hahu Magrumta.
Just a second.
That's the discussion. We're actually over here. Hahu Magrumta. Okay, all right. Okay. Hahu Magrumta. So what is Hagroma? So this is what we were in the middle of discussing yesterday.
Right.
There are five main laws of slaughtering. Hagroma is one of them. Right? Was it Shia, Drusa, Achlada, Hagroma? That's 5 of them. So Hagroma is where you have the trachea has a number of cartilage rings. And then at the top of it, there's the cricoid and the thyroid cartilage. And you have to slaughter within the rings or between the rings, but you cannot slaughter before the first ring. So, from what I understand, maybe someone correct me. I understand that this sort of when the animal is like an Adam's apple, basically, that goes up and down, and you have to make sure that the cartilage is up. The cartilage is up, and therefore you'll end up slaughtering either through or between the rings. Either one is okay. The key thing is that when you slaughter an animal on both sides of the slaughtered of the neck, there has to be cartilage. There has to be these rings, not the thyroid or the cricoid. Wow. Let's say you slaughter within the first ring. Now, what happened was you have a bunch of rings, right, lined up. You slaughter within the first ring, and you ended up going toward the thyroid and the cricoid, towards the animal's head. I believe that's called distal. So what happened was you ended up slicing through the first ring partially, and then between the first ring and the cricoid. In this case, we have so normally we would say that you look at the other side of the slaughter of the place of slaughter, you see rings. Now you're looking at it and you see half of it's a ring and half of it's the thyroid or the cricoid. So there's machlokes here. Do you need to have melochut apnei kulai or melochut apnei rubai? What does that mean? The halacha today follows the opinion, I believe, that we need melochut apnei kulai, which means that you have to have the complete amount of these ring cartilage. Mm-hmm. If you have even partial exposure to the thyroid, then the slaughter is invalid. Okay. So that was the story. So there's a guy who slaughtered, but he slaughtered incorrectly. He slaughtered in the wrong place, meaning not within or between the ring cartilage, but between the thyroid and the cricoid, between the first ring and the thyroid and the cricoid. Parfait. So Rav said it's not kosher. However, he also exempted the shochet from paying for the damage. Now, if you remember from yesterday, we were pretty strict on shochet, right? We said anyone who's machlokes, if you have to pay, an amateur always had to pay. A professional was machlokes. If the professional was getting hired for the job, he certainly has to pay for messing up. The only question was, a professional who wasn't hired for the job, does he need to pay or not? Regardless, over here, Rav says you're exempt. So if Kahana Pogobei Rav Kahana Ravasi Bahugavra. So if Kahana Ravasi found a guy who just lost his chicken, Rav Tarti, Rav damaged you in two ways. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? My Tarti, what does two ways mean? Ilam Tarti Ligrei, so that fundamentally they disagreed with him at two levels. Number one, the Boile Lachshur Kabesi Rabbi Yehudah. This type of hagrama was a hagrama. Again, hagrama means you slaughtered in the wrong place. Most specifically between there's a shir lamal and there's a shir lamata. The shir lamata is extremely difficult to violate. Meaning, you have the length of the trachea, right? Mm-hmm. It's comprised of a bunch of rings. The top of it you have is the Adam's apple, which is these sets of glands or cartilages. The dorsal half, the dorsal part, meaning toward the back of the animal, is basically impossible to violate. If you violate, there's probably a lot of other problems. The reason for that is because the lower portion of slaughter is below the top of the right lobe of the lung, I believe. I'm sorry, the left lung, which is basically impossible. You'll be slicing through the rib cage if you manage to do that. It's very, very difficult. It is possible, but it's unlikely that anyone would violate the laws in the lower half. Usually you violate the laws in the upper half, where if the animal sort of swallowed right before you bent its head back to slaughter, you can easily do hagroma. You can slaughter through the thyroid and the cricoid, and not through the regular ring cartilages. Now, within that, we said this machlokes whether you have to have an entire ring or at least part of it between the plates of slaughter and the thyroid and the cricoid, or even as long as it's mostly a ring, then it's fine. Like we pointed out yesterday, typically when a sheikhet slaughters, they slaughter through a ring and then between a ring. And the reason for this is very simple. It's much easier to slaughter an animal between the rings. Like I said, slaughtering an animal between the rings, sheikhet says, it's like cutting a plastic pipe with a box cutter. It's very, very difficult. It takes a lot of energy and you really have to put in hard work.
You have struggling animals.
What? Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah, and you want to slaughter pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Rabbi, if
Yes.
you acknowledge expert on that subject, does that make you Lord of the Rings?
Very good, very good, very good. So typically when sheikhim slaughter, they try to slaughter they don't slaughter perpendicular. So if you have the rings like this, they won't slaughter like this, they'll slaughter like this. So this way they'll slice partially through a ring, and then they'll end up between the rings, because that's the easiest, it's path of least resistance. That'll be the easiest way to slaughter. So, for example, let's say you think of a guy who's slaughtering within the first ring. He slaughters on an angle, and he ends up, the angle is distal, so he slaughters through the first ring only partially, but then slaughters are off the right between the rings and the thyroid and the cricoid. In that case, if there was a majority ring, according to Rabbi Yossi, it's kosher, and according to the rabbis, it's not kosher. So the proposal is maybe that this type of hagroma was actually kosher. It wasn't complete hagroma. Why? Because you had a majority of that first ring there, and according to Rabbi Yossi, that's kosher. Okay, the tarif Rabbanon, and instead of ruling like Rabbi Yossi, he ruled that it's non-kosher, it's treif like the rabbis. The inam Rabbanon, and even if he wanted to go with the rabbis, the Boile Chiyuv L'Tafcha, he should have required the sheikhet to pay. So in other words, basically this was So if Kahana or Ravasi basically were displeased perhaps with the laws of Rava. So the Gemara says, well, is it permitted to sit in a court and then to go bash the head of the court for ruling in a different way? Vatanya, we learned that when a person leaves the courtroom, a judge is not allowed to say, I exempted, but my friends, they held you reliable. Avamaz says, there are more friends of mine that disagreed with me. This is part of the prohibition of rechilos, of carrying slander. Okay. So the Gemara says, no, it can't be that they were sort of disagreeing with Rav. What actually happened was they were trying to praise Rav. What does this mean? Number one, he did not allow you to eat a suffix, whether something was prohibited or not. So like we said, this type of hagroma that happened, its invalidation of the slaughter, was a machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis. So Rav said it's better not to eat it. And now, however, at the same time, I can't require the butcher to pay for it, because maybe it was a good slaughter. So why should the butcher have to pay? Okay. The lo'ochel suffix, so he didn't give you the possibility of eating something which is prohibited. Umonach misafik gzelo, and at the same time, he didn't allow you to collect because maybe the slaughter was kosher, and then the butcher should not have to pay. We're good on that? Okay.
So sheltered insurance.
Yeah. Okay, a little easier from here on. Itmar.
Okay.
Hamara dinner l'shulchani v'nim tzara. Somebody shows a coin to a shulchani. Shulchani is a money trader. Okay, so now obviously money today is right. We don't really have money today. It's all fiat currency, right? We don't have, our currencies are not backed by anything. In the olden days, currencies were backed often usually by the weight of the legal tender in whatever precious metal it was. So the guy wants to make sure his coin. If you know anything about history, one of the big sins of history was called coin clipping. A coin clipper, many countries would give a death penalty for coin clipping because it was so pervasive, and it was so costly to the economy. A coin clipper would clip the coins. He'd sort of like take a peeler and like peel off layers of the coins. So he'd collect the precious material, but then hand off the coins at their face value. Effectively, they were stealing from the king. So you give a dinner, you give a coin to the money trader to tell whether this is like is this a good coin or not? Is it worn down? Is it missing stuff? So the money trader approves the coin. Turns out nobody is accepting it. It's counterfeit or it's clipped. One brayso says, Uman Potter hedit chayev. A professional is exempt, an amateur is liable. Another brayso says, Bein Uman Bein hedit chayev. Both a professional and an amateur are liable. Amar Papa Kitanya Uman Potter going Danko Isser Dleitzrich Lemigmar Klal. When the brayso says that a professional is exempt, it's talking about a professional like Danko and Isser. These were major professionals. They were like the forgery experts. Like when the guy finds the art in the attic, they find that the signature is forged or something like that. These were the experts in coins, the biggest experts. The key is like migmar klal. These people learned enough about the trade of forgery detection that nobody could teach them anything. They know all the tricks in the book. Okay, so the Gemara says, well, then how do they make the mistake? Al ma'at to. So the Gemara says, to b'sichsa chad to. That he shied enough him to say sichsa. That he enough him to say sichsa. Basically, what happened was they invalidated the currency, and at the moment that you brought it to them, they didn't realize that the currency had just then been invalidated, so they were exempt from that type of damage. So there was this woman who showed a dinner to Rav Chia. She said it's a good dinner, it's kosher. People will accept it. The next day, 1 second, he brought it in front of her. V'omerlei, 1 second. So she comes back to him and with the coin, and v'omerlei bisha, she says they told me this coin is no good, lekaноfically, and I can't spend it. Nobody is buying this coin for me. So Omerlei l'Rav. Rav was the nephew of Rav Chia, so Rav was in charge of his money. So he said to Rav, "Zil chalfei go switch it out for a different coin because of pinkasing and write on my pinkas's ledger, like the old school accountant ledger. So write on the ledger, Dain Asik Bish. This was a bad deal." So the Gemara says, "Ma'isha Danko ve'Isser diptirim mishum letzrich lemigmar." Okay, why is it that Danko and Isser are exempt? Because they know everything. So Rav Chia nami lav lemigmar kaboy. Rav Chia was also an expert. So why was Rav Chia liable to pay for this type of damage when he was considered an expert in detecting forgeries, and it turns out he made a mistake, he should be exempt. So Gemara says, Rav Chia was performing beyond the letter of the law. Beyond the letter of the law. Hitani Rav Yosef, like Rav Yosef explained, he's explaining the following verse. You have to teach. Okay, so the verse says, "Vaydat alahem." You have to teach. This is last week's parsha. Yisro gives advice to Moshe Rabbeinu. It says to them, "Vaydat alahem." You have to teach them the rules. What does that refer to? Zeh beis chayim. This is a house of their life. What is a house of their life? Talmud Torah, studying Torah. Es haderech, the road. What is that? Zug milas chasadim. That's doing chesed. Yelchu, to walk on. Zubik or chaylim, that's helping the ill. Ba in it. Zukvura, this is burial. Es hamaisa zehadin. Action, this is justice. Asher yasun, that they will perform. Hamaisa asher yasun, it's a doubled phrase. The action that they will do. Presumably, if there's an action, they'll do it. What does asher yasun mean that they'll do it? Lifnim mishur zadin, even beyond the letter of the law. Action is judgment, but the action that they will do is beyond justice, beyond the letter of the law, and that was what Rav Chia was practicing. God willing, when we get to the discussion of the laborers in Baf Mitzia, we'll soon see that it's even more than this. For a rabbi, it could be this behavior is compulsory. He's obligated to act this way. Okay, we get the famous story with Rav, where basically a bunch of people, Rav hired a bunch of laborers to carry barrels, and they broke the barrels. So Rav basically wanted to make them pay, and they were exempt on it because of technicality. So Rav said, "I'm not paying you for carrying the work." So the rabbi, the judge, he said no. He took the money away from Rav and he gave it to them. So Rav said, it's bad enough that I can't make them pay for the damage, and I have to pay them for the labor. So he says, yeah, this pasuk you have to do lifnim mishur zadin, beyond the letter of the law. You're a rabbi; it's compulsory. For the average population, it's not compulsory though. Rish Lakish achvele dinner l'Rav Elazar. Rish Lakish showed a coin to Rav Elazar. Amar Ma'ayu, who said it's a good coin. Amar lei chazid Allah kasamechna. So Rish Lakish tells him, you should know I'm relying on you. Amar lei ki sanvas lai ma'ala memra. Why do you need to emphasize to me that I'm relying on you? You're trying to tell me that if it's bad, you're going to make me switch it? You, Rish Lakish, have said that Reb Meir is the one who rules on garmi. Garmi is indirect damage. We've seen a number of examples of garmi. For one of them, easy example, is a rabbi who makes a mistake in judgment. Rabbi meaning a judge. He sat in a court. He rules on a financial matter, and he makes a mistake. That damage is called dina de garmi. He didn't directly damage the guy. So Reb Meir is the one who says you're liable for garmi, indirect damage. Okay, presumably, what did you mean to say? You meant to say my law, Reb Meir v'leisvirlin kavasei. It's the opinion of Reb Meir, and you disagree with it. So Gemara says, Amar lei loy. No, Reb Meir usvirlin kavasei. I'm letting you know that I actually rule it like Reb Meir, meaning I would rule that a money trader who errs in evaluating money is liable for indirect damage, just like Reb Meir. And that's why I'm letting you know that I'm relying on you, and I'm expecting you to switch it if you turn out to be incorrect. Okay, now of course you go digging. What are we looking for? Hi, Reb Meir. Where did Reb Meir say dina de garmi? Elam Reb Meir de Tanan. Let's try the first one. Okay, so we have this one you think is quite obvious, but it's not so obvious in the end. Don etzadin, the guy judges a case. Okay, don etzadin typically is financial matters. Zika sachayev chayev esazakai. He exempted the liable or made liable the exempt, right? So he erred in judgment, or moreover, he got a halacha question in matters of din, in matters of halacha, not in matters of din. So this is what we call isser v'heter, matters of things whether they're permitted or they're prohibited. And what did he do? Times atar. He made tamei that which was actually tahar, or he made tahar that which was tamei. Masha also what he did is done. The Yishalmi basically has to pay. Okay, so now I just told you that a judge who makes a mistake is in the category of garmi. So this is all examples of judges that made a mistake, and Rav Meir says you're chayev. What do you think? This is Rav Meir that's saying that you're liable for garmi, for indirect damage. Fair enough? Quite simple? It would seem so. I would think so too. However, not so simple.
Of course not.
Not so simple. By Itmar Allah, Amar Rabbi Loi, Amar Rav. Rabbi Loi says the name of Rav. V'hu shenot of an biyad. This is complicated. Basically, what happened was in this scenario is not the rabbi didn't just say you have to pay, you don't have to pay. This is tamei, this is tar. What he did was he repossessed the item. Okay, so let's explain. Let's go through each one of the items. So let's say Jules had a case with Eric, right? So Jules was exempt, Eric was liable. And me as the judge, I took the money from Jules. Again, Jules was exempt, Eric is liable. I took your money and I gave it physically. I grabbed the money away from you and I handed it over to Eric.
Yeah.
So in this case, I actually did damage you. I didn't just say, oh, Jules has to pay. I actually took the money from you and gave it to him. So I'm actually the thief. I made the mistake with my own hands, or the reverse. Jules is liable and Eric is exempt. And I took the guy who was exempt and I made him pay. Or I took the one who was liable and I took, let's say you were liable, I took your money and I gave it back to you. Okay. Or let's say there was a question whether there was a table, and there's a question whether a sheretz came on the table. So I ruled that the table was tahar. And to prove the table was tahar, I quickly grabbed the table and I went into the storage room and I dumped the table in between all the other ones. Now I proved that the table's tahar. Now what are you going to do? You don't know which table it was, right? Or the opposite. I said the table's tameh, and to prove it to you, I grabbed the bug and I dumped the bug on the table. So in this case, in all these cases, I didn't just say something. I actually did what I said. So therefore, I'm liable. So it would seem that this is garmi, but it's not garmi. I actually did it with my own hands, and that's why the judge is liable. Okay, next attempt. Elahar Reb Meir, the next opinion of Reb Meir. So this is Gemara quite a few times so far. He told him to color it red, and the guy colored it black. Shachar black, v'tzavei adam, and he colored it red. Reb Meir made samurai. He gives him he has to pay him for the wool. Now, obviously, the Gemara points out here, Hasam ka'avid b'yadayim. This is physical damage, direct physical damage. You took the item, you put it in the wrong pot. There was red dye and black dye, and you put it in the wrong one. So that's not garmi. That's regular. That's actually damage. Actual damage. Elahar Reb Meir. This opinion of Reb Meir. The time we learned. Okay, this is the laws of Kloi HaKerem. What does that mean? So I was growing grapes, and you were growing cucumbers, and I took my grapevines. Grapevines are very big, and we were growing within the legal limit. So let's say they were 4 amos away, or maybe there was a fence, and I physically took the vines and I dumped them on top of your cucumbers. The law is once the cucumbers grow an increase of 1 in 200, 0.5% in size, then the cucumbers are now prohibited. You're prohibited. Cucumbers are prohibited. Okay, Harez Kiddush v'chayav. So Kiddush means it sort of sanctifies them, but this means in the negative sense. It separates them, and you're liable to pay. I have to pay for making your cucumbers prohibited. So Gemara says, I know what do you mean. Hasanami ka'av b'yadayim. Over there also, I physically took my grapevines and dumped them on your property. Elahar Meir, it's the following Meir. Tanya we learned chitza kerem. So here's, without going too much into Klayim, again, me and Jules have a farm. Whatever, we're next door neighbors. I grow grapes, you grow cucumbers. Okay, now typically the rule is you would have to space a certain amount of distance between the two crops. However, there's an exception to the rule. What's the exception? If there's a wall. So we put up a small chain link fence or something, and I grow my grapes right up to the wall, and you grow your cucumbers also right up to the fence. So our plants are right next to each other, 5 inches apart. However, there's a wall in between, so it's kosher. There's no problem here of Klayim. Klayim is the law of interbreeding.
My other question is, you said like chain link fence. Does it have to be a solid wall? What the wall has?
It's a good question. Yeah. Okay. So maybe it was a solid wall.
Okay.
It was. It had those green things in the chain link
Yeah, I
fence.
knew it was like it has to be a
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah.
No, they cover it.
Okay. So he puts so we have these two things right next to each other, right?
Right.
Now again, if the wool comes down, then immediately we have the 200 rule, right? If it grows 0.5% in size, it's going to be prohibited. So what happens? This fence, it breaks. Mechitza kerem shenifritza. Turn the page. We're on 100b, top of the page. Omer lo gedor. So quickly, inform me that I have the response. I'm the owner of the vineyard. It's my responsibility to repair the fence. Okay. Of course, I was very tired. So instead of going to repair the fence, I went to take a nap. And Omer lo gedor nisyayesh imenu v'lo gadra. I gave up, meaning I went to sleep. I knew about it. I chose to take a nap. V'lo gadra, I didn't fix the fence. So what happens? I raise a kiddush. What happens is if your cucumbers grow 0.5%, 1 in 200, then they're prohibited, and I have to pay you. Now over here, did I do any action? No, indirect damage. It's indirect damage, or mayor says you have to pay. Okay, now we go back to our favorite Gemara. A guy gives a wool to a dyer, and he burns it. He has to pay him for the value of the wool. Savai Ka'ar, he colors it like a bad color. It's not it's a job that people are. Ka'ar, it means kior, it means like disgusted by. I don't know what exactly that means, but it's a really terrible job. He did a bad job. So he was supposed to, let's say the material was supposed to be turned into a red carpet, and now I don't know, it's spotted or it's not colored uniformly. It's going to go. It'll be used for some useless category. Okay. So now here's the question. So you have this wool. The wool sells for $1 a pound, right? The red carpet eligible wool sells for $10 a pound. And this spotted wool, I don't know, it's $3 a pound. Right? It's worth a little bit more because it's somewhat dyed, but it's not a good job. Now, you also have to pay for the dye. The dye costs money also. And the dyer charges for his work as well. So here's the question now. Let's say the fee of the dyer is $2 a pound. A pound of wool. So now we ask ourselves this question. So we calculate as follows. The wool is $1 a pound raw, right? The labor of the wool is, let's say, $3 a pound, right? Now, is the spotted wool worth more than $3 a pound or less than $3 a pound? Okay, let's explain. Let's say it's worth $5 a pound. So then you pay him for his services, because ultimately speaking, he increased the value of the item you gave him more than his fee. So shvach would be the increase in value. It went from $1 a pound to $5 a pound. The yitzia, the cost of that was $3 a pound. So there's a profit there of $1 a pound. So we say, what do you pay? Pay the yitzia, the cost. Meaning you pay the dyer for his troubles. Let's say, on the other hand, this spotted wool only sells for $2 a pound. So now, what was the increase in value? $1. What's the cost of that? $3, or $3 a pound. So it's a net loss of $2 a pound. So in that case, we say the guy pays the shvach. He pays the increase in value, and not the yitzia, not the cost, because the craftsman, in this case the dyer, failed to perform according to expectations. Make sense?
Essentially, it would be whichever was the lowest.
The lower, right, exactly. The lower of the increase in value, what we call shvach, or cost, which we call yitzia. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. In general, by the way, this is a very common Talmudical concept. When somebody messes up, but you benefit from it, messes up meaning he fails to follow instructions or expectations. Then the typical rule that we'll often implement is this rule. It's you pay the lesser of the increase in value or the cost. It's a very common rule. Okay. Let's say Adam Mitzav Shachar. So this is the Gemara we just saw it. You told him to dye it red, and he dyed it black. Shachar Mitzav Adam, black, and he dyed it red. He pays him for the wool. Rabbi Yehudah says no. So Meir says he does not need to pay for the increase in value. And we'd have to explain what the difference is between the two scenarios, right? In scenario number one, he did a bad job, the right color, but a bad job. Over here, he did the wrong job. Different. So Rameir says, pay for damages. Just give him back wool. Give him back the wool. The wool is $1 a pound. You give him $1 a pound, and he'll start from scratch. Whereas Rabbi Yehudah says no, same rule. Shvach yitzia. Shvach again, increase in value. Yitzia cost. So which is lower? If the increase in value is lower, give him the increase in value. If the cost is lower because the increase in value is more than the cost, give him the cost.
Give him, the owner.
The dyer. The owner would give the dyer the
owner
cost
would give the dyer.
or the increase in value, the lesser of the two. Okay. My ka'ar, what does that mean? What does the word ka'ar mean? Amar Nachman, Amar Rabbi Ranchana, kalbus. It's kalbus. Well, you might be wondering, my kalbus, what exactly is kalbus? So Amar Rabbi Bar Shmuel, kafra doidi. Okay, this is the bottom of the pot. You know the expression, the bottom of the barrel? So, I guess in my family, we always knew that the soup is the best at the bottom, right? Such a chicken soup. But apparently, the bottom of a dye vat is not the best place. Yeah, so apparently this results in basically a bad job. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. A guy gives wood to a woodworker to build a chair. Well, the disclosure here is from here on I'm not well prepared. And he built him he built him a bench. So kisei is a chair, that's what we're sitting on right now, right? So a bench is a thing without a back usually. Right? Builds him a bench. Safsal v'asam hen kisei. He tells him to build a bench, and the guy built him a chair. Rameir says you pay for the woods, which is pretty obvious, right? Rameir says you told the guy to dye it red, he dyes it black, you pay for the wool. He did the wrong thing. It wasn't just a bad job, it was the wrong thing. Same thing here. You built the wrong thing, you pay for the woods. Rabbi Yehudah says, if the increase in value is more than the cost, then you pay the cost. If the cost is more than the increase in value, you pay the increase in value. Same, the lesser of the cost or the increase in value, which is exactly Rabbi Yehudah according to his own opinion. If he gave wood to a woodworker to make a chair, kisei nov, osman kisei kior, he told him to build like an elegant chair, like a kisei shelio or something, some fancy chair. And he made a the cheap chair, the folding chair or whatever, Safsal no, I told him to build a nice prestigious bench. Vasa Safsal kior, he made the outdoor picnic bench. So then Rameir says, this is not the case of doing the wrong job. This is a case of doing a bad job. And in a bad job, Rameir agrees, you give the lesser of the increase in value or the cost. Together? Iboilahu. Yesh shvach samonim al hatzemer or ein shvach samonim al hatzemer. One second. Okay. The question here is how to evaluate the color of wool. The fact that the wool was previously uncolored and now it's colored. So let's try to figure out what's the scenario. What happened was a guy stole dye, and one second, and he crushed up the dyes and he soaked them in the water, and then he dyed things in that dye. One second. Okay. So now what happened was a guy. Here's the question. The guy steals the dye, crushes it up, he puts it in a boiling pot of water, and then he dyes stuff. Now the owner, right? Let's say you own the dye, right? And I'm the thief. So I stole the dye. Can you say, well, not only do you have to give me back that pot with all the dye in it, I want your clothing too, that has my dye on your clothing. So the Gemara says, 1 second. Over here, there's a technical problem here. Over here, you crushed it. When I stole it, I crushed the dies. So by crushing die, I changed it. So then I'm kind of okay. So what happened? I didn't steal the die and crush it. I stole the pot. So you had a pot of die, right? I stole the pot. So on the boiling on the flame, you're ready to die, right? Did a hands up thing, whatever. Took away the pot. Let's really go to someone shruin. It's solvable. Ma yesh shvach samano magabi tzemer. The amrli havli samanoid shkaltenu. Adilma ain't shvach samano magabi at tzemer. The amr less lecha gaboy v'lamidi. Okay, so what happened was I took your pot, I stole it. Maybe I even added some water to it, and then I dipped my clothing into the pot. So now I have beautiful blue clothing, or red clothing, or whatever color it was. Can you claim your dye on my clothing? My clothing is dyed now with your color. So when I have to return the stolen item, it's the pot, but do I have to return my clothing too to you now that my clothing is blue or red or whatever color it was?
That's Charlotte's question now.
So this is color significant?
Yeah.
Do we look at the fact that your color is on my clothing? Is that considered yours or not?
Mm-hmm. The same question that Sherlock had, that they have in Sherlock had. When he went to this pound of flesh. And the question was, what about the blood and all the other stuff in the flesh?
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, fine. Let's stop here. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.